So I started pulling the engine out on this 330. So what I did was I disconnected the headers. I'm probably going to have to disconnect them from below and just take the headers out, but because especially this one needs the I need to disconnect the starter. So basically, just to pull an engine, you just got to start working back to what needs to be pulled. The radiator has to come out. I got to take this hood off and take the radiator out and disconnect these heater hoses and things like that kind of secure it to the car. And then from there, I can just get to the motor mounts that are down below. Get this car has a four mount engine mount, so I can pull those out. And then I think what I'm going to do on these carburetors is just disconnect the fuel rail and maybe just take the intakes off and just pull them off as a single piece and just put it on the shelf. I mean, it'll get cleaned up and degreased. The carburetors, like I said before, were completely rebuilt, so they should be good, but underneath the intakes look pretty crusty. So all that stuff will get cleaned up and degreased. I think if I remember correctly, on these Series 1 cars, as you lift the engine out, either you have to take the angle drive out or you take the coils out, because the coils get hit right here by the back side of the bell housing, because the engine kind of has to come straight up because of the cross member. But I tried to take this distributor out, and there's a nut that's the wrong nut, so the shoulder is kind of recessed in there and it's not coming out. I'm trying to look to figure out a way to disconnect it, but so that angle drive's not coming out, so I may have to pull that coil out. The angle drive also has this speedometer, or rather the tack cable that comes out of the back of it, so that may be problematic. I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping I can get it up high enough and then slide it forward without everything getting in the way, but and then I'll have to address this bolt that's not coming out. It'll be a lot easier once it's on the bench to pull it out than trying to squeeze around it while it's in the car. But you know, this engine has quite a few things that I could see that we're probably going to have to address if we're going to do the engine. I mean, this fuel line here is pretty poorly installed. I'm surprised it doesn't leak. This looks like an original yellow fuel line. You can see how like it's all cracked and everything. And then I'll have to talk to the owner about whether or not, while we have everything out, are we going to chrome this fuel rail. The fuel rails were industrial chrome, so you can see how like it's kind of thin. It wasn't like a really high shiny chrome, but it definitely has seen better days. But that kind of goes with the rest of everything. When you redo an engine, it's like, are we replating all the hardware and cleaning everything up, or are we just doing the engine? Because obviously the wrinkle paint has to be done, and you know, and it can just be a slippery slope where you start redoing everything. But there are certain things that are worth doing for a few $100s, like the plating and the nuts and acorn nuts and stuff. It'll dress up a little bit better. The valve covers, I think, are pretty easy since they're off. We might as well wrinkle paint them and get all the chips and everything out of them. Fuel rail, but it's going to be a negotiation, like, you know, just discussing with the owner, because it's not a full restoration. We're not trying to restore this car, but if we're going to do the mechanicals on this engine, you just do it once, and then you don't have to go back and deal with it again. But I'm going to keep working on taking this engine out and get to a point where it'll come out, and we'll just go from there. Well, today it starts. I'm going to pull the engine out of this 330. It starts with the hood coming off, and then we're going to pull the radiator. Already drained it, and then what Matthew and I are going to do is start taking the interior out. Seats have to come out, center console has to come out, so then that we can unbolt the drive shaft off the transmission and pull the drive shaft out, and then disconnect the transmission, slide that back. On a Ferrari, it comes out from inside the car. So once the transmission is out, then we can unbolt the rest of the engine, headers, all the other stuff in the front, coolant hoses and the heater hoses and all the wiring. Not too much wiring, but that comes out, and then we should be able to pull this engine out. So we'll start doing that. So the decision is whether or not this car is going to fight me every way, the whole way out of here, There's a lot of stuff in here that's just kind of wrong. I mean, the way the seat mount was in, it's been cut open, and the only thing that was holding this seat in was this bolt. This was in here, and it was kind of captured in here on this tiny little tab with a washer, and that was pretty, washer and a nut. That's kind of crazy. And then this one over here is pretty seized. I'm going to try to get this one out with an impact driver, but let's see what happens. But yeah, I'm thinking that this is going to fight us the whole way out. All right, I got the seat out, and it's a big mess in here. So when I was unbolting that other piece, this came out because I couldn't get the seat to slide back, because you can see the bolt had come off the bottom of the seat and was dragging inside the rail. So I couldn't even unbolt it normally. I couldn't slide this further forward because that's as far as it would go. So it was covering the nut. So once I got that nut out, this thing just came out. It wasn't even bolted. So that came out. And then now I can actually get to this. Before, I had to unbolt it from the bottom of the seat. And of course, like I said, the spacers I use are bearings. Now I can get this off, take the seat rail out. This is going to have to be fixed. This is kind of a little dangerous, because that's all that was holding the front seat against the nut or the spacer. So we're going to have to reconstruct this seat rail and install it correctly. Put the right capture nut in here. I'm going to take this one off. Let's see if this actually works. Yeah, this is coming out. Cars of this era, maybe not, I have to use the impact, but cars of this era used Phillips, but you can also change them with Allen. One of these was an Allen, or is it? Actually, I had an Allen here. So a lot of mismatched stuff, but I think we've got to fix all this before we put it in, at least get it right and safe. Well, we took the engine out of the car. It actually started first with the transmission. I mean, on 250 and 330 engines, the transmission has to come out first, and it comes out from inside the car. So unfortunately, I don't have video of the transmission coming out from inside. It, he's had a problem and it didn't turn out the way that I was hoping, but it definitely, I wish I could have showed you the struggle, but it is always a struggle to get one of these transmissions out. It's got to get, the drive shaft has to come out, the transmission has to be disconnected, clutch linkage, all that stuff, and the bolts and transmission mounts. But the reason why is it's got to come straight back so that the engine can come straight up out of the engine compartment. So getting that out means you got to take the interior out. You got to take the seats out. It's easier to take both seats out and the center console and the radio and all that other stuff so that you can get this transmission. This one, the way I do it is one person is in the bottom of the car and the other person's up top and straddling the transmission tunnel and just trying to get it out and sideways and then into the passenger compartment. And then once it's in the passenger compartment, we hoist it out onto the floor. I'll have to decide where I'm going to put this thing, but I think I really need to clean it first, just so that I don't get filthy every time you move this thing. And then the engine comes out. So we started taking that out, and that was the easy part. I mean, once we had everything disconnected, and there was just 4 motor mounts that had to get unbolted, and I missed the fuel line, so I had to just quickly get the fuel line disconnected to the mechanical pump. But everything else kind of came out pretty easily once you do it. I mean, I've done this a couple times. I know what to expect. So that came out, and we're able to get it on the floor. So what the plan now is just, I think, as always, before I do anything, I'm going to clean it, because this engine is, again, just absolutely filthy. I mean, obviously there's some issues with the compression on this engine, but before I even start disassembly, I got to get some of this grease off of it, because it's just not easy to take stuff apart when it's just covered in grease and oil and all this other crazy stuff. So I'm I'm going to clean this up, probably take it outside and try to power wash some of this grease off. But and then make some room in the shop to start disassembling this engine to get it all apart and get it ready for machine work. Pulled the transmission out of the 330. Don't know what condition it's in, but at the very least I'm going to clean this thing off, because I can't even have it at the shop this dirty, because every time you touch it your hands just get filthy. So I'm going to try to just take it outside and degrease it and try to get it at least somewhat cleaner than what I see here. But man, this is probably one of the greasiest transmissions I've seen. Well, before I clean this engine up, I gotta try to get this strip nut, or not strip nut, but just rounded corners of this nut out. So I tried all my sockets, I tried all the tricks I had, but the one way to get it out was just to chisel it out. I caught a corner of it, and it's basically turning now free, so I can actually just turn it out. So but it needed to be chiseled because it was stuck, and I couldn't, and the access to this is so tight against here, you really just can't get a socket in there. So that's why they make those special nuts or special bolts with the shoulders on them, so you can access. You put a regular bolt like this in there and you can have problems. So I'm finally getting it out, and I can move forward on this engine disassembly. Before I power washed the 330 engine, I wanted to take some of the accessories off. So I went ahead and took the starter off, and I took the clutch off, and a couple of the hoses in the front. I think the engine would be a little bit better exposed to the power washer to get all this junk off. So taking off the starter and those things that were just in the way was probably the best way to go. That way I could get this engine on straps and up in the air, and maybe hanging from my forklift, so I can get the power washer on it. Oh boy, what a mess! Trying to get this thermostat housing off. It was pretty seized on there. I have to take this heater hose assembly off, but I finally got this thermostat housing off. But you could see how badly corroded these studs were. Look at this and this. They're basically just corroded onto this aluminum housing. So yeah, I had to use a little bit of heat and a little bit of penetrating oil, and just slowly wedging this thing up and getting it past that corroded stud. I think this water pump housing is going to be the same problem. I think the studs are a little stuck. I'm hoping not as much coolant got in there, because usually what happens is a little bit of coolant weeping from the gasket will weep its way up the stud, rust the stud out, and then the stud will lock the aluminum housing in place. So yeah, that's going to be a little bit of a struggle, but at least I got the thermostat housing off, and we can keep moving forward. I got the engine hanging from my forklift for cleaning. I have this forklift in the shop, and I probably use it about once every couple months, but I tell you, it pays for itself when I need a forklift. The only problem, I don't have it paved out here, so I can't really drive it out of the shop, but it's still enough for me to hang, something like an engine outside and get it far enough away that I can actually power wash some of the dirt and grease off of it. But yeah, the engine's in a lot cleaner position now. I can actually work on it a little bit. But yeah, it's pretty grimy, rusty, not rusty, but just greasy and leaking and all that stuff. So it really helped to clean off some of this stuff. I still have quite a bit of cleaning to do, but at least you're not getting completely dirty every time you touch this engine now. So what I have to do now is take this water pump off. I think that's going to be a problem. I already had some problems here, as you can see from those studs that were all rusty, corroded. Really was a bear to get out. But I think it's going to be the same thing with this water pump. But I'm going to try to take some more accessories off. Going to take these off, take the water oil pump assembly, take this water pump assembly off. dipstick tube, take the flywheel off, and all that stuff, this rear bottom section off, and eventually work on the heads. I need to decide whether or not I'm going to wait until I get a free engine stand to do this, because right now I've got all my engine stands are kind of being used. So you know, do I wait until I get those engines back together, which could be like another couple weeks, you know, where I can free up one of the engine stands, or do I just start taking this engine apart on the floor? Because I could get the heads off. It's just you're kind of leaning over and it's not great on your back. But I might think about it and see how stuck these heads are and see where it goes from there. But first step was to get it clean. I'm going to take this inside and put it on a dolly and go from there. But one step at a time. Well, I finally got the water pump off. Boy, that fought me all the way. But this one came off very slowly. Each stud was rusty. I mean, I even sanded some of them. I was halfway out to try to get it back. You know, like I said, it's like they were rusty and basically seized to the sleeves inside the aluminum stud. So the steel studs would go through this aluminum housing, and then because of the corrosion that was weeping up the gasket, it would just seize on the water pump housing. It wasn't as bad as it could have been, but it still kind of needed wedging and walking and pulling and, you know, just getting it out. But I've seen worse, so I'm certainly not complaining. But one thing that was interesting is as I was working on this engine, I started to think about this engine, and this is a 330 engine, but it's a 4-mount engine. So in other words, Ferrari made these engines with 4 engine mounts. The later cars went to a single, or rather 2 motor mounts, which should balance on the center of the car, and they went to Series 2 330s, use that, GTCs also. But one thing I started to think about, I was like, this is a pretty rare engine because of this water pump setup. Now, Ferrari had their own foundry, so they could basically cast whatever they wanted to do. And after the 275 displacement, they went to 330, and this is the design they came up with a water pump, which is this one piece, not driven off the chain, but belt driven. Earlier cars, like the 250s and the 275s, the water pump was driven off the timing chest. This is actually pretty nice because you could take the water pump off, change it, put it back on without actually worrying about dropping the chain or taking anything off of the the front of the engine. But what's interesting is this engine came originally on the 330 America. So in other words, my car has the same setup. So a 330 America was the first one that came with this 330 engine, this 4-mount 330 engine. But what happened was, by the time they went to the Series 2 cars, they changed this whole layout. So let me show you. Since I have these engines in the shop, I'll show you real quick. So the 250 engine, the water pump is down here, driven off the chain. That's how they always laid them out. That was the way the 275s, 250s, 275 engines went. Then they went to that engine, which was the water pump not driven by the chain, and then they went back to a chain-driven water pump on this engine. Now this is an early 330 engine with 4 mounts, but it came off of a 2-headlight car, and this is the water pump housing, which is driven off the chain again. So they modified the way the water pump ran. They kind of like did it like this, the same way the 250s, but there was this engine, this first series of 330 engines, that was just a belt-driven water pump. So start to think about it, this is fairly rare, because if you think about the fact that 330 Americas, there's only 50 of those engines. What do they make? About, probably, I'd imagine all the Series 1 330 engines had this layout. So that's another 500. So it's only about 450 of these engines, I think. 550. Let's just go with 550, unless somebody else knows exactly how many of these engines they made. But when you think about 550 engines in the world that are designed like this, it's fairly rare. For Ferrari, that's kind of like the average, because let's say there's 300 some odd models, and like on the 330 Series 1 cars, there's 500 models, and then there's another 500 of the Series 2 cars. But half the production was this water pump. So it's kind of neat working on something like this, saying how many people really understand, when they take these engines apart, the differences and the variations, simply because Ferrari changed designs, pretty drastic designs from 1 year to the next. But anyway, just silly trivia information. I don't know how useful it is, but just if you're into vintage Ferraris and you see stuff that you normally wouldn't see, this is where you're going to see it. Time to get back to work. So I'm taking the this valve covers off, and no wonder why this was a leaker. No square cut O-ring. It looks like it was just filled up with silicone in there. So let's see if there even was. Nope, no O-ring. Looks like it was cut off. Get a light so I could show you. So the O-ring was just cut clean off, and gobs and gobs of silicone. I feel like you have to use silicone to seal these engines up, but when you have this much, like look at that, that's quite a bit. And it wouldn't seal anyway, because there needs to be an O-ring in that groove, not filled with silicone. That's not going to seal. So that's one of the reasons why this engine was pretty oily. Just to show you what I mean by the square ring, even though this one has tons of oil, this one has the square ring, but has tons of silicone as well. Don't know how well that would have sealed, but as you can see, when you put this in here, that O-ring is supposed to slide in there, and it's supposed to sit in there, but that one didn't have it. So either way, it's not the best way to go. Work continues on this 330 engine. I got the rocker assemblies out, took those all out, and getting ready to pull the head. I mean, you could do a couple things. I mean, I could take the timing chest off, but the problem with that is because I don't have an engine stand available to me right now. Timing chest doesn't come out until I disconnect the oil pump, which then requires I have to take the upper and lower oil pan off and disconnect the hose to the oil pump. So for the sake of just making some progress on this engine, I'm going to pull the head without having to take the timing chest off, which you can do once you take the cam out and disconnect it from the front sprocket. So I got all the head nuts off and washers, and this head is either going to be easy or it's going to be hard. Most times with these engines, they are not easy to pull off, simply because there's usually corrosion on the studs, on the head studs, and the head just does not want to come off. This head is long, and I've seen heads crack from people trying to pry it off or pull it off and force it. You need to have a head puller tool. The factory had these big square pieces that would go on these and pull off the head, but the other thing you can do is you can make one yourself. I have this head puller plate that I've made through the years, and there's different variations of this. I actually have lent this out to people who, because it's already measured and cut and the studs are all in place where the heads are. And in fact, I just sent it out about a month ago to someone out in California, and they borrowed it and said, hey, yeah, sure, send it out. I don't need it anytime. I don't have anything going on. And all of a sudden this engine came up. So I called them up and I said, hey, listen, you pulled the head off. Can you send me the plate back? Yeah, sure, I'll send it back. Do you need the collars? And I was like, well, I sent you all the hardware, so send back all the hardware. And the collars didn't come back. I sent out a bunch of these guys and nuts and bolts, and what I got back was missing a couple pieces. So, no good deed goes unpunished. Sent out the head studs, got some money for it to rent it, but like the money and time it takes to go back out, make new collars, find the nuts that weren't in the box again, and go to the store and do it's just like, why do I even bother? But I do a good job to try to lend stuff out, and yeah, I guess you just gotta expect that it doesn't come back the way you sent it. The most important thing is I got my plate back. I got some of the hardware back, but no nuts, no collars. Now I have to make new collars to slide in. The collars basically are to slide onto each stud like this. They help locate the bolt as you're pushing against that stud to pull against the plate. If you don't have these collars in there, what will happen is as you push on this thing, it sometimes can walk itself off the top of the head and bend, especially as this thing starts pulling higher. It just helps locate everything, but also these bolts that I'm using are just mild steel. They're not hard, so they will deform on the ends before the hardened head studs start deforming when you put pressure on them. I just kind of ran around the shop and tried to find some hardware that I had to save me a trip. I'm going to see how much tension this plate can take, or if this head starts moving. If it moves, then I can do it with just a few studs. If it doesn't move, then I'm going to have to go get more nuts. But just moving forward, I'm pulling this head off. All right, well, it looks like it's going to be an easy one, at least on the 1/6 bank. If you look at the space at the head, it's starting to open. This side hasn't been released yet. This one has. I just put 3 studs in because that's the hardware that I had, and I just wanted to see if it would even crack loose, and it is. It's starting to walk its way up, so that's good. I mean, sometimes you put these pullers in and you go to screw it down and it doesn't budge at all, but I just gave it a couple cranks and it started to come. So but it still needs to be walked up a little bit at a time. Just make sure it comes up evenly, because I'm always watching that space between the block and the head to make sure it's coming up evenly from front to back and side to side, because it can very easily get cocked on the stud and you're cranking on it and you can still break something. So I'm just going to be really careful, and we're just going to walk this thing up. So I got the first head off pretty easily. It actually didn't have much corrosion. I had one stud that showed a little bit of corrosion. You can see all that white stuff. But the rest of them were pretty good. Actually, these two studs showed a little bit of corrosion. So, but the head came off pretty easily. I just went nice and slow and tried not to get it cocked, but got it off. So the second one is giving me a little bit of a problem. I could see that this side seems to not want to move as quickly as this side. So I have to go get more nuts and bolts and sleeves and stuff like that made, because the first one came off with literally just these 6 studs. But I'm gonna have to install all the other ones, which will evenly lift his head and apply more pressure. I don't want to cheat with just the 3 nuts that I had, or rather the 6 nuts I had in the shop. I just need to go to the store and get some more. But managed to get one side off, and let me continue this tomorrow. So I'm back at it this morning, and I installed the more of the head studs. I went out and got some more hardware, and started to screw them all in to where it is. So what happened was, yesterday, as I was pulling the 7/12 bank, I could feel the head moving. You can see that little gap between the block and the head. But if you look closely, it gets narrower over here, because what's happened is, as I was pushing against it, this side was fighting a little harder than the other side. So I said, well, you know what? I need to go get more hardware. I need to get the rest of the studs. I installed more of them on this side than I installed over here, because I don't think this side is that tight. I may end up putting them in anyway, but I installed all the nuts. So everything's pulling evenly. I just have 1 or 2 more to put in, and also to put in these steel guides. These collars that I make, they're just cut from tubing, and they guide the bolt that pushes against the head stud, because what will happen is that keeps the everything kind of in place as you're pushing. everything is kind of loosey-goosey, as you can see, and the reason why these holes are, I originally had welded nuts onto this plate, but what I started to realize is that, you know, even though these are all machined heads and everything kind of moves a little bit, so if you lock these bolts in place and make a you know, and lock everything in, it actually can cause it to not line up with certain heads. So I found the holes kind of have to be a little loose. That's why they're nuts and bolts and washers, a little finicky to install, but once you have everything kind of tightened in place, it keeps everything kind of in place for a particular head. So that way you can pull heads and without having issues of anything walking off. But it's just through the years I just learned that this is the best way to do it, with the collars and also mild steel bolts, because that way you're not really putting a lot of stress on anything, and the first thing that's going to break is the threads. In fact, I pulled one yesterday as I was cranking down on it. As I was pushing on it, it stripped the threads, because that's how much pressure was going on. Now, these are soft threads on bolts and nuts, but I'd rather have it stripped on a bolt than have actually something crack. You put too much stress on this head, and it's an aluminum head, you can crack something. So you got to go really careful. You got to go by feel, and you just kind of feel when it's starting to get tight, and you just stop. I think I'm at the point now where it's going to come out. I mean, it's pretty far up the studs. It shouldn't be stuck, and I've been spraying all this penetrating oil, so it should be dripping down inside of there. So I think what I'm going to do is just let it sit with a little bit of tension on it for, you know, a few hours or maybe even overnight, and then come back and take a look at it. I was going to do it earlier, but I got impatient, and impatience is usually what happens when you break something. So again, I'm going to stop right here, I promise, and then I'm going to come back and get this head off. Well, we got the heads off, and I remember that the problem that we had was cylinder number 9. And here's the problem. It looks like the seat is gone. Usually when a seat drops, it's like it's clattering away, but this thing must have fell into a bunch of little pieces. You can see all the damage on the top of the head, you know, up in the combustion chamber, and beat up that combustion chamber pretty well. And then if you look down in the mating piston, you can almost see the round shape of the seat that hit against the top of the piston and bounced around. What's also interesting is the adjacent cylinder. Probably what happened was all those pieces were hitting around, and they got sucked up into the intake valve and then went up in the intake runner and then dropped into the adjacent valve, so or the adjacent cylinder. So that's why that one's all beat up too. But the rest of the engine looks kind of okay. So we're gonna have to see how badly the seat is, you know, if there's enough material there to put a new seat in. We're probably gonna have to machine this out and then see, maybe this is gonna have to be welded in a little bit to build up some material so that we can remachine a new seat, or machine a pocket to drop in a new seat. Once I get these valves out, I'll be able to tell what kind of seats are in this car, in this engine, because the old seats will have a certain color. New seats, people tend to use a different type of seat material. So we'll be interested to take these heads apart and find out. But that's where we are right now with the engine. So I'm going to keep disassembling, and you know, stay tuned for more engine disassembly. Thanks for watching.